In order for somebody to finish the marathon of their career, as hard as it may be, they have to be just as focused on running serotonin and being present as they do on dopamine. So the serotonin side has to be carefully cultivated, and you have to build that and learn how to be present and learn how to actually give yourself some time to rebuild the dopamine reserves every single day. So that's how you finish the marathon, or else you burn out.
I'm Amy Woodall, and this is Conscious Habit, a show from the People Forward Network, teaching you how to incorporate love and consciousness at work, home, and the world at large. You just heard from Kevin Bailey, CEO and founder of Dreamfuel, who helps high-performance teams reach their potential using neuroscience-based mindfulness techniques. Now, I've known Kevin for a number of years. We have been very like-missioned and like-hearted, and I love that his story of evolution and ultimately the impact that he makes kind of starts with his own demise in a sense. Hitting a dark place has proven to be a gift for him and everyone that he works with. Our conversation is a beautiful breakdown of the science behind meditation and the causes and cure for burnout. Take a listen. Okay, Kevin, this has been a long time coming. You and I talked about the dreaming of this podcast a year ago. And I was like, I'm going to have you on my podcast. And we're like, great, when's the date? And this was like September of 2021. And I'm like, hang on, I have to sign contracts and get this going first. So I'm glad that a year in the making, we have this dream come to life. So welcome to the podcast.
All in due time.
Kevin and I have known each other for a handful of years, and I think we are here to serve a similar purpose. And to me, the word consciousness really resonates. I would just love to hear what word most resonates with you, and then where the hell did this journey start from?
That's a great question. I've never been asked for a singular word. Potential is the word that I like to use, because I think we have a similar perspective that these tools are great to help humans live up to their potential. And that often the game of living up to your potential does come down to your consciousness. So I know consciousness is probably your word, so say potential.
I think potential is really good. And the work that you're doing in organizations with leaders, with sales teams, it is a realization of that potential.
100%. Yeah, I mean, it's tangible, trackable, measurable. The work that we do that gets labeled one thing or the other, eventually organizations realize it's the key to unlocking the potential of their team. And once they realize that, and it's gloves off, and you see some great companies that have been created through consciousness, awareness, neuroscience, these different tools. 3 companies that, well, 2 in particular that I've worked with from Jump Street pretty much, one a little bit later, have become unicorns by practicing these tools. There's a 3rd one in the wings and 2 others that are close behind. If you want to grow your company, you have to help your people grow. And that's the stuff that we work on.
The tagline of Conscious Habit is the root of result, but I think that is true for anything that is purpose, conscious, mindfulness oriented. It's the root of all of it, of where we're going. And so love the work that you're doing. I'm curious. I kind of know the story, but I think this is great for listeners to hear and then to even hear a little bit deeper. Where did Dreamfuel come from?
So I'm a tech founder. My first tech company I founded when I was in my mid-20s, a company called Slingshot, and really fast growth story. Founded with a couple of my buddies. Hit a certain point where we were a little over 100 employees. And I think the stress bell curve started coming up a little bit. And then I had my first kid. And I always say babies break mindsets, but it was my awakening where I went from having what I would call an abundance mindset, where we were super optimistic, to being more of a scarcity mindset. And I started to make decisions in my business that were holding on to sand. And we had an exit come up that I kind of messed up a little bit. And then it just got really dark really fast. And I ended up meeting 2 people who helped me realize that consciousness was the answer. One was a former Air Force pilot from Vietnam who dropped a lot of bombs and stuff and had acquired PTSD from that and cured it with meditation. So he taught me how to meditate. And then I met a neuroscientist who taught me and I'm a very science-minded. I'm a scientist myself. Right now finishing my master's in neuroscience. And she taught me basically the nuts and bolts of how the brain works and all the different neuromodulators and how they interact. And I was able to kind of pull myself out of a pretty dark spot with a combination of meditation and then some of these tools she was teaching me. One of those things I did was our company went through some problems and I had to go help us sell, which was really interesting, being a founder. And I went and set some sales records and really helped our team at the time kind of get their act together, as well as I was resurrecting my own spirit through that. And then some of my buddies, so one in particular, David Duran from Greenlight Guru, was like, you seem like a whole different person. What are you doing? And then I told him and he's like, well, my sales team is having some struggles. Could you come in and work with them? So this was like before this stuff was even, not that it's cool now, but it's a little bit more pop since COVID. This was way before that, like when people thought this was just weird. So that might have been like 2016, 15. I came in and started meditating. We were doing breathing exercises, which is a little cooler, like Wim Hof breathing and stuff like that. We call it mental reset breathing now. But went and did some of that stuff with their sales team and started using visualization, other consciousness tools to help them start to see their potential as a team. Then they started setting records and getting along really well, and engagement went up, close rates went up, everything looked really good. And that was when I decided that I wanted to kind of go back into the tech community. Linked up with Matt Hunkler, one of my good friends, and we worked on launching Powder Keg, which is basically a Midwest tech community. And as I was in Powder Keg, I started noticing, wow, a lot of these tech founders, they're under a lot of pressure just like I was, and maybe some of them aren't reacting perfectly to it. I saw a lot of stress and a lot of struggle there. So I talked to Matt about, hey, I think that I best serve our community by building a company that focuses on mindset, which is Dreamfuel. About that time, it stopped working at Greenlight. David called me back up and said, hey, we just let go of our VP of sales. We need mindset work again. Came in, same thing happened. Close rates went up. They started setting records again, set them up to go on a giant growth run with their new VP of sales, Jimmy Spire, ultimately getting a $120 million fundraise done. They're off to the races now. I worked for the whole company. And then during that time period, Dreamfuel was acquired. A handful of other high growth companies we work with, including a public company, Smartsheets, but they're all high growth tech companies, and mainly working with the executives and sales teams, but also starting to work with some engineering departments and stuff like that. They need mindset just as much as anyone. It's just, as you know, Amy, it's most measurable in sales, and executives tend to be under such stress that it's helpful for them as well. But it's helpful for anyone and everyone, including people that don't even work, stay-at-home dads or moms. Everyone needs this. My kids need this stuff. So I've just been enjoying working with high performers, work with athletes as well, but also just like trying to get the message out that you want to live up to your potential, whatever that is. These tools are very helpful.
You're right. There is a leaning into this stuff since COVID, because I think it was that abrupt, like, oh, life can be different. It forced people to slow down. And some people were like, hey, this ain't so bad. My pace addiction has been on such high alert, especially for high achievers, that it's all about the next achievement. And I think that's where burnout comes from. I think burnout is not about the work we're doing. It's about our perception or what we think is on the other side of the work. If we think our happiness, our joy, our peace are on the other side of the accomplishment or the people pleasing, whatever, we are going to be so damn burned out, because that exists from the inside out, not the outside in. So there is a leaning in. And I'd be really curious, because you're having such great results and great conversations. What is it people are experiencing that have them leaning in and reaching out to you saying, Kevin, we need to talk?
Well, first of all, great point about burnout. And I look at burnout neurochemically. If you get real basic with it, you have dopamine, which is associated with the left hemisphere of the brain. You have serotonin, which is associated with the right hemisphere of the brain. Dopamine is the neurotransmitter of pleasure and motivation, not the neurotransmitter of happiness. Serotonin is the neurotransmitter of happiness, presence. Dopamine is very goal-oriented. Serotonin is very now-oriented. So burnout is just over-indexing on dopamine. So there's not enough serotonin. So a neuroscientist, the way that they look at it is, we have to build a mental profile that engages both hemispheres of the brain equally, so that you are giving yourself time to literally reconstitute dopamine. And in doing that, you use serotonin and become very present. So there's this yin and yang back and forth between dopamine and serotonin that allows a person to regenerate and rebuild their dopamine reserves so they can go back. Constantly, though, over-indexing on dopamine and not cultivating serotonin means you never have a chance to recharge your dopamine. And when that happens, you run out of the molecule of motivation. And then what comes in is cortisol. So cortisol also it's a hormone that helps you with effort, but it's very painful and very obviously stress provoking. So you run out of dopamine, you start bringing a bunch of cortisol in, and then you start to basically over-index on cortisol. So you start running your life on cortisol, puts you into the flight response, basically running from an attacking predator. You live your life feeling like you're being attacked by a predator, and then eventually you go, F this, and then you quit. That's because your body needs to rebuild itself because you've basically depleted yourself. You've run enough cortisol that's destructed a lot of your nervous system, and you're just like, I need to stop. That's the ultimate manifestation of the flight response. So in order for somebody to finish the marathon of their career, as hard as it may be, they have to be just as focused on running serotonin and being present as they do on dopamine, which is the most addictive neurochemical we have. So the serotonin side has to be carefully cultivated. And you have to build that and learn how to be present and learn how to actually give yourself some time to rebuild the dopamine reserves every single day. So that's how you finish the marathon, or else you burn out.
I love it. I'm sure people have their notepads out and they're like, okay, give me more of this. The neuroscience stuff is so helpful because I think it gives people not just a visual, but really like something to go back and track and measure. It's hard to always be able to measure mindset. And I know you built some technology to help people do that. But I like the idea that you're bringing the neuroscience in there. And so if I'm in this position, if I'm listening to this podcast right now and I'm like, I know there's a better way. I'm tired. I have just been go, go, go. What can I do to begin to strengthen or you create that reserve of serotonin, as you mentioned?
It's always fun when I get to work with somebody, obviously being a mental performance coach. Like I work with a lot of high achievers. Every once in a while, I get somebody who goes, hey, I'm pretty good with my career. I really want to be better outside of work. I want to build a better family. I want to connect more with my kids. I want to connect more with my wife. Tell me about what I need to do there. And then I look at them, I say, well, you got to throw out everything you did that got you here, at least when you go home, because serotonin is a very different beast than dopamine. And a lot of people who are goal-oriented will go into their personal life and try and run it like they do work. And they'll bring a bunch of dopamine into it, which will create a somewhat messy home life typically. So learning how to cultivate and use dopamine is about learning how the right hemisphere of the brain works. And the left hemisphere is words, categories. It dissects, time-bound, goal-oriented. The right brain is a lot more, and there's actually a neuroscientist who had a stroke in the left hemisphere and became enlightened.
It's a great book that she wrote, by the way. My Stroke of Insight.
Yeah, super good. But the right side, is serotonin. It's timeless. It's effortless. It savors. It's at ease. It's a wonderful place to be. It feels really good. Most linked to, for lack of a better word, the divine. It's where inspiration comes from. And to learn how to cultivate dopamine, you are learning how to be goalless, learning how to savor moments, learning how to learning how to be with your family, to be with your kids like a child, 100% immersed in the activity, not making everything a competition, learning how to jump in puddles for no reason. And that itself is how you learn how to cultivate and use serotonin. It's about learning to savor moments. So let's say you're trying to learn how to cultivate dopamine and you're doing that via cooking a meal. First thing you do is throw out time. So you need to make sure you have enough time that it doesn't matter how long it takes. Make sure you're cooking the meal with somebody you love to talk to and strike up great conversation and just slow cook the meal and just really immerse yourself in the conversation. Let go of any intentionality, no intentions, just being there. And then slowly, as slow as you can, eat the meal, chew your food fully, continue to engage in the dialogue, let everything unfold naturally, no planning. That's how you use serotonin. And eventually you find yourself awash in serotonin, which is the happiness molecule, which is wonderful. And you have those amazing experiences that you want to cherish forever. And they happen spontaneously with no real direction other than going into an activity with the openness to enjoy it and not turn it into some competition type of a time-bound activity. So the way you learn to cultivate serotonin is by learning how to be goalless, which is really hard for high achievers. It's harder to do that than to teach them how to use dopamine for sure.
I think it's the worthiness thing, which that's a whole other deep conversation, is for some reason we kind of think I have to achieve to feel good about myself. And so I think that keeps us going and running ourselves ragged, and then getting to this place where burnout is sometimes people are just like, I can't do anything. My brain doesn't work. So I like this idea of people who are listening who might be like, I just want to lean a bit more into presence. I think, yeah, simple things like chew your food slowly, taste your drink when you drink it. Like, can you not be on your phone and eat a meal?
One thing I do for presence is like the first bite you take of your meal, be all in on that bite, really like get into it, savor it, because that's going to be the best bite of the meal is the first one. And just really let yourself enjoy that first bite. And that will kind of cue you into being present for the rest of the meal. But food is a great way to be present. Get your cell phone out of there, get all the distractions out of there. Don't worry about time if at all possible. And just, savor that first bite and let that be an indicator. You can set little intention for being present. Like you can, imagine you're watching yourself and you can comment on, look how present Kevin is savoring this first bite. Because your subconscious mind wants to go in the future and it wants to go in the past. To be present, you have to be here. Subconscious wants to be all over the place. It wants to think about the last meal and what happened during your work day, and it wants to think about the next day. So you got to get the subconscious mind on board. You can use visualization for that by seeing yourself and kind of like your mind's eye, eating and being present. Give yourself like, I don't know, a little reward for being present. Compliment yourself. Look how present Kevin is. Look at him enjoying his meal. What a great job he's doing being present in this moment. I'm always trying to program my mind to do what it needs to do to be successful. So I do little stuff like that without thinking about it now. But to people who aren't into this stuff, are probably like, what the hell is he talking about?
He's talking in third person. He's living out his Jerry Seinfeld dreams. I dig it. And I just think we can use our senses to lean into the present, right? Because that's how we experience life. So whether it's the experience of eating food, or if you are in a location and you're like, I just want to lean into the presence of seeing what's around me. I call it anchoring. What are we doing to anchor ourselves in that present? Hearing. Close your eyes and just listen to what's around you, and try not to do it with too much judgment, just pure presence. I think it can be simple, but I talk to people all the time, and I wish we could just go around and help dispel the myths about meditation and mindfulness, because I'm sure you hear this too. People are like, I've tried it. I'm not very good at it. I couldn't stop my thinking. And I'm like, A, who told you that meditation was a goal to be good at? And B, who told you your mind ever stopped thinking? When you hear that, what is your advice? What do you say to people?
Yeah, kind of like just what you said. It's funny because, I'm not good at it. It's like, that's not even a concept in meditation. It's not even a concept as it relates to serotonin, because meditation is quintessential serotonin activities. It is completely goalless. I remember when Rich, who was the Air Force pilot who taught me how to meditate, it took so long because I was super dopamine driven at that point, very, very goal oriented. And goals are great. Your career is a marathon. Like, it's not a sprint. So you have to know how to keep balance. But I get done and I'd be like, Rich, I had so many thoughts, and and he'd just be like, great. I'd be like, but thoughts are bad, right? No, you just process a lot of thoughts. That's great. And eventually I learned that meditation was depotentiation of the mind. Depotentiation meaning taking all the little small t traumas and like taking those neural networks and turning them off, bringing them down to a resting rate. So any trauma that you have, or any positive thing, that's like the neural network in your brain. So a network of neurons that are firing really fast, and they stay at that heightened rate until you go into it, which is the thought. So like maybe you think about, why did Tommy steal my toy when I was 5? What a jerk. So you go into it. Meditation forces that potentiated neural network to come to the surface. And then you breathe, which is the way you keep your nervous system calm in all situations. And you watch the thought and let it pass. And then that neural network turns off. And if there's any goal to meditation, it's just to process through all that garbage and turn it off. Not that there is, though. So Rich would be like, yeah, great, you process a lot of thoughts. It took the neuroscience for you to figure out actually why that mattered. But that's what he would tell me. And eventually I got it. And my first like transcendent experience, where I kind of like went to unity consciousness for briefly. And I remember after that happened, then meditation became a way for me to reach that state of consciousness. And Rich had to be like, that may never happen again. Don't ever try and go toward that again. You'll just drive yourself crazy. It was one of those beautiful experiences I ever had. And then Rich is just like, now you're going to become obsessed with that, and it's going to ruin your meditation practice. You need to stop. You need to like, that was cool. That happened. It may never happen again. Let it be, and just start to meditate purely for the sake of meditating.
A book I recommend to people who are curious about this is Emily Fletcher's book, Stress Less, Accomplish More. It makes it like super simple. And I like that she sort of says, you don't meditate to be a good meditator. You meditate to be better and more prepared for life. And so I've been meditating, 6 or 7 years. I've never had a thoughtless meditation. There's been some that have been so deep and peaceful and blissful, and others where I'm like, am I done yet? They're always different, but they serve the purpose. It's kind of like we don't go to the gym for that experience alone. Like sometimes, yes, because it burns stress, but we go to the gym because there's after effects. I think of meditation the same way. Do you have recommendations, by the way, of like, if somebody's curious and they're beginners, or maybe they've tried it and they haven't stuck with it? What's your recommendation that maybe they read or look into?
A good book just to read about consciousness a little bit from a scientific standpoint, which is my approach, is called No Self, No Problem. That's a great book written by a neuroscientist that sort of dives into how does the brain work and how is reality really structured and how do we perceive it and why do we perceive it the way we do? What is enlightenment scientifically? It's a good book. It's short too.
If anybody's on here and you're curious about this, I would say go on YouTube. There's lots of apps out there. You could check out an app. You could go on YouTube. You could start with breath work. I think that's an easy one. And Kevin, you mentioned that you do that with people, but breath work is a very easy introduction, and Wim Hof breathing is fun, like easy 10-minute videos. You'll notice the difference in how you feel. So you and I were talking before we hopped on and hit record, and I was sort of like, tell me what's going on at Dreamfuel. And you had mentioned that there's some programs launching, there's some software that you have developed. And so I'd love to just hear a little bit more about it.
Being a tech founder, I've been trying to figure out where's the right place to introduce technology into Dreamfuel. I've obviously worked with a lot of companies that use different things to measure culture. Some great apps, great tools, Office Vibe, even Amplify, one of my clients. I got acquired by 15Five, another great company that measures environmental factors and team factors that impact performance. And I was like, what if we really measured mindset, the internal state of our teams? What would that mean for us? What would that mean for the people we coach? I was like, well, it'd be great for our coaches because tough to improve what you don't measure. So I was like, all right, so how do we measure mindset? Like, what is it? So I did a bunch of research and figure out what's out there, And for mental health, there's a lot of stuff. But in sports psychology and performance psychology, meaning like surveys and things like that are statistically significant, factor analysis, certified by statisticians. So I kind of looked at all of that. I was like, there's not much on so I call it mental fitness. I'm not a mental health practitioner. I'm always looking for somebody who's like mentally healthy and trying to make them mentally fit. So it's like, take like somebody like, oh, they're in shape. And then somebody like, damn, that's an athlete. Like I try to turn people into a mental athlete. So me and a PhD friend of mine and the rest of our team just sat down to derive like, how do we measure mindset? And we picked 6 pillars that really measure elite performance mentally. That's drive, motivation. Obviously, if your motivation is gone, you're not going to be doing much. Discipline, another really important aspect of mental performance. Focus, the ability to focus in on things when there's a distracting environment, to fully put all of your attention on the most important thing. Obviously, vitality, so feeling your best, well-being. And then confidence, the ability not only to be confident going into something, but to be confident regardless what life throws at you. So to be adaptable confidence. And then resilience, the ability to bounce back very quickly from adversity. One call goes bad, hopping on the next call in the best state of mind possible. And we developed a question set that we give people every day. Takes a minute. We text it to them and they're able to answer these quick questions. And then you start to track and measure their mindset over time and get all that data. And it's super cool to look at. Even for myself, like I love tracking it. And now I know what techniques I need to use. I use 15 different types of journaling I do for different situations, 20 different types of visualization I do. And like, I have all these like tools, but when and how do you apply them? So now we got the data, so we're starting to learn how to apply them, starting to measure what an outlier mindset looks like, say in a salesperson or an executive, coaching to the outliers, the ability to then say, okay, here's the tools you need to use to recreate more A players that show up consistently on your team. And now it's just a big science experiment. So that's really fun. For anybody who's listening to this, obviously the software is neat. I'm geeking out about it right now. But our program, we have 4 performance psychologists on staff. One's a former professional athlete. One's a professor. One brought a company public. We all are, obviously me. And we're all good at different things. But we all love this stuff to the bottom of our hearts. And we do this program every quarter called MindFit 180, depending on when this program was launched. Yeah, we're doing one in Q3 of 2022, doing one in Q4 of 2022. So that would be the thing to look into if you're an individual. If you happen to coach a team, We have plenty of programs for that. Most of our work is with teams, but the individual programs are really special to me because those people are paying out of pocket and they are really into this stuff. For people that resonate with what I'm talking about, really want the scientific approach to this stuff, I think we have one of the best programs there is. We're trying to be as cutting edge as we can be, and it works. No doubt about it.
Before we wrap up this episode, here are my 3 takeaways from Kevin and how we can incorporate them into our lives and our work. If you want to grow your company, you gotta grow your people. Now, I know that this is not new information, but as the marketplace begins to shift, sometimes this mindset of scarcity kicks in, and we want to stop all of the good things that worked prior to. So if you're listening to this and you're a leader in an organization, or if you've been investing in yourself, my encouragement to you is keep doing what you know works. And if you want to be better than your competition, you got to invest in yourself differently than they do. Number 2, there is science behind all this woo-woo stuff, and y'all know I love some woo-woo. I joke that I put the woo in Woodall, but I also love the science behind that, and Kevin does such a great job of sharing that. If you're curious about some additional resources, I would say connect with Kevin on LinkedIn. He has really amazing posts that back that science-based thinking. I personally appreciate Dr. Joe Dispenza and all of the various books that he's written, but what we're talking about here with mindfulness and consciousness is not woo-woo. There actually is science to back it all. And then lastly, just knowing what happens during burnout, what happens to our brain, how our various hormones are involved. I found that to be so fascinating, and that we can hack those things through better understanding of what works for us. I think that's really incredible. We don't have to be the victim to what's happening outside of us. We can get curious and really begin to make change from within. And so if you want to learn more about this stuff, I love authors like Joe Dispenza. I think he does some great work. You can YouTube it. Again, follow Kevin on LinkedIn. I'm a big believer that loving our life happens from the inside out. So get curious about what you're actually able to control. Thanks for listening to Conscious Habit, a show from the People Forward Network. If you have questions for me or our guest, or you're looking for more ways to just live or lead more consciously, head over to Facebook. We have a Conscious Habit community there. Let's keep this conversation going. Until next time, do the world a favor and go love yourself.